We'll be with you until 7 o'clock this evening. Pet Cash is up next between 7 and 9 with Life and Money. But Dimakatsohenko is busy preparing your last bulletin of the day. That's at 7, this evening, before Pet Cash take us through to 9 o'clock with Life and Money. Dr. Maluleke, thanks for staying with us. So before the break, we were talking about those number of questions and criticisms really around the accuracy of the 2022 census that was released. What was really behind those criticisms? Were those people who were criticizing these numbers accurate in their analysis, in criticizing how you release them?
Modise, for starters, if there was a challenge with census figures, that is census 2022, we would have been the first ones to say we are not releasing those. And I will tell you, after releasing the numbers, we were followed by matters of fertility, which we had said we wanted to release about 2-3 months ago, mortality and income. And we saw biases in those numbers, and we decided we are not releasing them. So the decision is ours. So whatever we released can stand the test of time. So I want to come back to the final figure that we released, 62 million people as of 2nd February 2022. How do you go about releasing a census figure? Firstly, you go to field, you collect data. So we went to 17.4 million households. When you go to 17.4 million households, you either find a person there, you ask them questions, and then you record them. Or you don't find them and you visit. But you can't go there and you don't find them and you keep on looking for that one person. You have to go on and look for other people. So in the end, when you have made 2-3 attempts, you classify them as non-contact. Or you look at the house and you find that it's a vacant dwelling. You do find a lot, and they will show you the windows are broken. You can see it's a vacant dwelling. Or sometimes you will have a refusal. 1.2 million households refused. But we are not the police, so we don't go around forcing people. You will wait here and answer our questions. We record, we move. After going to 17.4 million dwelling units, we found information about 42 million persons. Now, having found 42 million persons, then we started looking at our data. After looking at our data, we realized that we have missed 31% of the persons. The lowest was in the Free State, 20%. The highest was in the Western Cape, 35.58. So having said so, then what do you do? After you have realized you have missed the people, you must adjust. But you don't just adjust. You first bring experts. So we brought experts, local and international experts. They looked at our data in field work. They looked at this, the way we have asked questions. They looked at the way we have dealt with the issues of consistency. They came back and said, Statistician-General, we are solid. Go ahead, release the numbers. But before that, there is what we call the South African Statistics Council, which is made of people from different walks of life here in South Africa and outside, here in South Africa. But they also had to do their own work. But to do their own work, they wanted a quality that we must bring to them. And quality must first be measured by us. So we take 1% of the 17.4 million dwelling units. That's 174,000 dwelling units. We go and collect documents. Record for record, we compare. Record for record, we compare. If we find a Modise Maluleke and a Risenga Maluleke, we want to know if the records are the same, if Modise and Risenga are twins, or there are people, there are different people in the family working for the same, if they are earning the same salary, if they have the same number of children. So we do what we call reconciliation visits until we get 100% of the 174 records. Once we have that, we get again another set of local and international experts who look at everything about the post-enumeration survey. Now, that post-enumeration survey, the Statistics Council, which is an independent body out of Stats SA, which may have professors, people from all walks of life. They come in, they bring in their own local and international experts. So you have a battery of 6 steps. One is collection by Stats SA experts that we bring in. Post-enumeration survey experts that we bring in. Council experts that they bring in. And all of them were in unison that the adjustment that we are comfortable making will give us a final figure. So we came back with a final figure of 62 million. Remember, we counted 42 million people. When we adjust, we don't just go blanket in the Free State. We look at, in the 20%, did we miss more younger people or older people? Did we miss more women or males? Did we miss more people in informal settlements? All those weights are there. That is what we use for adjustment. So when we adjust, the data is in the public space now. So every user becomes important to us, whether it's a young person or an old person. So I want to come to the point that was raised about the veracity of the numbers. There are 2 professors, demographers. I respect them so well. They know me, I know them very well. They came in and said, no, SG, you have released the numbers, but you have overestimated the population by 1 million. So that is the first thing. Members of the public, including municipalities, were saying you have underestimated the population. So if 2 professors come and say you have overestimated, it means then we had to go back and cut from the 62 million and cut further. Members of the public and municipalities would be complaining. So, but we take every user serious, whether you are a professor, a demographer, a professor in statistics, or a gogo in the village. So I sent 4 of my deputies to meet with the professors. They raised their issues, we showed them what we have done, and we showed them we are solid. They came back and said, no, we are comfortable. But they went and released their report, and they disregarded everything that we gave them. That is number 1. Number 2 is that the 2 professors were asked by the Statistics Council, not by Stats SA, to come and assist in evaluating the census. For all the technical reasons they raised, they didn't form part of that. But having said that, all users are equal. Whether you are a gogo in the village or you are a professor, they are equal. Number 2 is that you don't become a critic by walking away when you are asked to come and serve and go and raise things outside, and you leave information that you were given because you want to drive a particular point.
I was about to get to that point as to whether you have had the opportunity of meeting them and maybe trying to understand their position, where they are coming from. How did they get to the million that they said you undercounted? So you have sent...
No, they said we overcounted, not undercounted.
Oh, you overcounted.
They said actually to them the population should have been 61 million.
Okay. Yeah. So you've never had the opportunity, besides your deputies who met these 2 professors?
Let me tell you, Modise, the deputies are the technicians. They are the ones that are much more solid. I'm just the spokesperson. Of course, I'm a statistician by training. But why should the Statistician-General, who has much more stronger people, who are also professors in their own qualifications, or who are qualified, why should the Statistician-General be the one? I know them, I've met them, I've spoken to them on the phone, I've communicated with them by email, but they needed people that engage with them at a level where they actually engage on the same issues.
But again, I understand where they are coming from, not in terms of whether you overcounted or undercounted the numbers, but the importance of this number to our government, the importance of these states to the authorities in ensuring that we get the right people for the right positions, services to the people, how many people we have in the country, what kind of services do they want, and all that. So talk us through that again, SG, as to how crucial are these numbers? Because we want the accuracy. I think the problem here is how accurate are these numbers, and how is that going to assist in terms of all these services that our people want from government and so on and so forth.
Modise, that is why Stats SA must be independent. If you are sitting with members of the public who are saying, including municipalities, The city of Joburg is saying you have actually counted less than we expected. We expected more people. But the job of statistics is not an expectation. You go and count. We don't sit here and throw bones and say, I expect how many people. You go and count. That is number one. Number two is, how do you reconcile it yourself? If you have the whole nation saying, let's say, you counted us less, and you have two professors who are saying you counted more, go and cut the numbers. Do you sit there and say, we are going to cut more or we are going to increase? That's why you have a battery of tests that you put in place so that when you release a number, you are solid on the number. So the accuracy of the number is not a point for discussion here. Even if you were to bring the professors, actually, some political parties went on to say they want a recount. The two professors later, it's there in News 24. They said, no, we didn't mean that. We were just saying there are one or two issues there. The census is a very solid issue. So imagine Stats SA was running this way when someone says something and runs this way. We would not know what we are doing. That's why we are supposed to be independent. Yes. So now the solid numbers that we are talking about, the accurate numbers that we have released, by the way, is no longer even 62 million.
How many
we are now in February 2nd, 2022, we were sitting at 62 million, with Gauteng sitting at 15.1 million, followed by KwaZulu-Natal, followed by Western Cape at 7.4 million, 7.2 million in the Eastern Cape, all the way to the Northern Cape at about 2.4 million. As we are talking now, as of mid-2024, that is almost, 18 months later. We are sitting at 63 million. We released population mid-year estimates. We are sitting at 63 million. Gauteng is leading at 15.9 million. It's followed by KwaZulu-Natal. Gauteng has more than 25% of the population of the country. And the lowest is in the Northern Cape. So that discussion of 2022, even if we went to recount Modise, we would not reconstruct that. The country is moving on. And the veracity of the numbers stands solid. That is why...
And let's go back then to the importance of these numbers.
Certainly. The importance of these numbers. So let us start on the importance of the numbers. One, they are used for planning. As we are talking now, we need to build roads, we need to build streets, we need to supply water. And by the way, when we work on the census, we don't count citizens. The Statistician-General is responsible for everyone who finds themselves within the borders of South Africa. And I know I get asked this question. Are you saying you are encouraging people to be here legally or illegally? It's not my space. The legality of the people is the space of SAPS, the police. Because as we are talking now, people in South Africa, whether they are citizens, whether they are here illegally documented or they are here undocumented or illegal, they are using services now. When they go on the freeway doesn't ask them, are you legal or illegal? They are busy using water, electricity, ablution facilities. When they flush a toilet, it doesn't ask them, are you legal or illegal before they flush? They have to use facilities. Having said that, let us come. These numbers are used for planning. So one of the issues is the allocation of and distribution of resources, especially budgets. I mean, you have heard last week, MEC Maile saying we lost 6 billion rands because Stats SA didn't count enough or had previously overestimated us and now they underestimated us. If we had said no, we are listening to the professors who would be cutting more, there would be more cries. So they are used because in the fiscal and financial and fiscal commission formula, population accounts for the most. That is why you have what you call vertical allocation, where you have data to national, province, and municipalities. But you also have not vertical, horizontal. You also have vertical that looks at issues like health, like education. You have more learners in KwaZulu-Natal than you have anywhere else, although the highest population is in Gauteng. So for allocation of budgets and distribution of resources, the census is being used.
Thank you so much, Tate Maluleke, for that clarity. We're going to take yet another break, and when we return, we will now be talking to SG about the challenges facing this office, including the budget cuts. I think every government department was affected by those austerity measures as announced by the Treasury. How has that affected your office, SG, and some of the challenges generally that are facing this office of the Statistician-General? All of this and more when we return. Stay tuned.
Here's to the rebirth of radio. Radio that's in tune with its listener, in tune with you. That's what radio is all about. You are radio and radio is you. So you deserve radio that reflects you and your world, your lifestyle, your aspirations, and your ever-changing music taste. Radio that keeps its finger on the pulse. Radio that delivers up-to-date news and well-researched content. A listener-led radio station. Radio that doesn't speak at you, but rather listens and engages you. The rebirth is here. Radio that laughs with you, cries with you, celebrates with you. Radio that understands you. Our purpose is to use the magic of radio to inspire the human race. That's why we do what we do. We listen to inspire. UFM, in tune with you. UFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to broadcasting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful to children, does not amount to hate speech, and contains no gratuitous violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, you may inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa, P.O. Box 412365, Craig Hall 2024. Or send a fax to 011-326-3198 or email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. News Hour, powered by Newsnote. Newsnote, now you know. The UFM News Hour with Motlhaping Modise.
News Hour still coming to you live from Johannesburg. So if you're just listening to us, please do interact with us on social media. That's where you can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, including on X or Facebook at UFM 898, at UFM 898, including UFM 898 on all social media platforms. In studio, we are joined by the Statistician-General, SG. Thanks for staying with us. So I want us then to get to your job. What do you do every day? We spoke about the census. We spoke about the GDP stats that you released earlier today. When you're not busy with these two, what other job do you do? Every morning when you get to the office, are you always on conducting this survey? So what do you do?
Let me start off by talking about the work of StatsSA and dedicate this part to the men and women who work at StatsSA, some of them in the field as we are talking. So when people are born, StatsSA is there. That is why we release the number of recorded live births. We can tell you that the number of live births that are recorded through Home Affairs are between 89 and 90% within 30 days, and the rest will be recorded later. We can tell you the number of births that occurred to young people in the ages of your 11, 12 years, and as way as mothers that are in their 50s and something. When those children go to school, we are there. And in the unfortunate situation, and we don't have taste buds, we don't talk about unfortunate or not. If these children die within a year, we are there, infant mortality. If they die within 5 years, child mortality. If these mothers die within 42 days after giving birth, maternal mortality, we are there, we measure these issues. Now, go forward. When the children start school, we are there. We'll tell you how many children are in primary school, in high school, secondary school, all the way to university, the learners. When they finish and go to work, we'll tell you about the number of people employed, unemployed. And from the quarterly employment survey, we go to the factory gates. We know where they are hired, what they earn in salaries, as well as what they earn in bonuses. And then now, when we move from there, we move to the industry. Which industry they work in, what goods they produce. When goods are produced at gate level, we know the producer price indices. And when they are in the factory, in the floor shop, in the shop floor, my apologies, we know that's why we compute the consumer price index, which the governor uses to look at the repo rate and the like. And of course, when people get married, we are there. We talk to you about the number of people married. When they divorce, we are there. When they take debt, we are there. We tell you about insolvencies as well as bankruptcies of companies. And unfortunately, when people die, we are there. We have to tell you what has taken the lives of South Africans. So then you want to know what happens to the Statistician-General.
I think I'm answered already.
But it's not what the Statistician-General does on daily basis. So one amongst other things, the Statistician-General goes to media houses like yourselves, talk about the good work that Stats SA staff members are doing. And then when I'm not there, I meet with policymakers, I meet with parliamentarians, briefing them about the numbers, going to talk to them about the budget asks that we may want to have, but also telling them about what they need to look at when they look at employment and issues of poverty and the like. And of course, it doesn't end there. The Statistician-General meets with other statisticians on the African continent. I was in Ethiopia about 2 weeks ago, and then I'm in the Gambia next week meeting with other statisticians all over the continent to look at how we refine methods. Beginning of the year, next year, and other parts of the year, we meet with other statisticians globally at the United Nations. We're a member of the United Nations Statistics Commission. And indeed, let me assure you that Stats SA is amongst the top 5 agencies in the world. When it comes to anything statistics, there's nothing that gets finalized without Stats SA being involved. Because of the men and women who are solid, who are qualified to do the work, and they ask me to speak on their behalf.
And that sounds a lot, but I wonder how you able to do all of this, Dr. Maluleke, given the budget cut to your office. How do you survive? How much was cut from the Stats SA, and how has that affected your operations daily?
Let us start by saying that, firstly, budget cuts didn't affect Stats SA alone. Everyone in the country, you go to any municipality, you go to any government department, you go to any province, they will tell you they have budget cuts. It's because when you want to raise a budget as a nation, firstly, you need the number of people who are working, who will pay taxes. And then you also need companies that will pay taxes. And we know that a lot of tax comes from the people who are working. And the fact that the number of people who are working, just look back, 2020, we were sitting at 16.4 million people that are working. COVID slashed them to about 14.1 million. Out of those, not everyone pays taxes. About 30% of our population is sitting at levels where they are doing domestic and low-paying salaries. So you're left with about 7-8 million of people who can pay taxes. So everyone has suffered that. Having said that, the issues and the challenges of budgets in Stats SA didn't start in 2020. They started in 2016. Since 2016, and we are soon going to 2026, Stats SA hasn't been given enough funds to run. Actually, there were years where we were not just getting a cent extra. We were getting cuts. And there are times when we have overspent because you can't fire your employees. There are times that we have overspent by 58 million, 70 million. Even this year that we are finalizing, end of March next year, on the compensation of employees, we are going to overspend. Even in the census, we had asked for 6 billion rands. We were given 3 billion rands. We have overspent. We have overspent by almost 1 billion rands because we could not stop the census midway. Having said that, Stats SA used to produce about more than 284 products per annum. Now we are producing between 250 and 270. What have we cut? We have cut integrative reports where we used to look at the GDP, the economy, the prices. We would write some reports. Because one, we don't have money to do those. Because the people that we have must be able to be doing the work. We have to protect what we call national indicators. We have to produce issues of the economy. We have to produce, firstly, the population. I spoke about population media estimates. We have to produce the figures about the economy as of today. We have to produce the consumer price index. We have to talk about employment, unemployment. Those are key national indicators. How far we can go without money, I do not know. Because it's not a question of how far we can go without money. Our vacancy rate is sitting at about 20%. We have about 660 staff members that we are in our structure, but we are not able to fill the positions. This year we were allowed to fill 7 positions. So if you ask me how many years it will take us, almost 700 staff members, and we are filling 7 positions, it will take us the next 100 years to fill the vacant ones if others don't resign. But as we are talking, others are resigning. We are losing about 27 to 28 staff members every quarter. So there will be time where we will come back to tell South Africans, through media houses like yourselves, that we can no longer produce the CPI monthly. Maybe we'll produce it quarterly. The GDP won't come out quarterly. It will come out once a year. Other countries are already doing that. They release quarterly labor force survey once a year or once every 2 years. You can only cut the size of your dress, the size of your dress based on the size of your cloth.
Thank you so much. Risenga Maluleke is the Statistician-General. It's 11 minutes before 7. Thank you for staying tuned to UFM News Hour. Now we are going to wrap up our discussion, SG. And earlier we were talking behind the scene or off air, and you told me an interesting story of you wanting to be a truck driver. Because I was asking a question earlier, how did you get to this position? What did you say to your parents when they asked you? Because I'm sure your peers wanted to be policemen, footballers, doctors, nurses, and so on and so forth. And I believe you did not tell them you were going to be a statistician general.
Modise, it's quite interesting. Firstly, I was born and bred in Limpopo in a small village of Mtititi outside Giyani and Malamulele. Now, when I was growing up there were very few jobs that black Africans could aspire to have. So are Indian, Asians, as well as colored people, because you could not have an opportunity like any other population group like a white child would have, especially when you are growing up deep in the villages. So everyone wanted to be a policeman or woman, a teacher, a nurse, and for myself, I wanted to be a truck driver. And why I wanted to be a truck driver is because when I was young, there were no roads in the villages. Our school principal, the late Mr. Masuluke, Walter Masuluke, had a big truck, and I used to marvel at him driving in those, there were not even roads. These are paths that our parents had made for him to be able to come to our school. He had a Bedford truck, and Mr. Ngobeni and Mr. Shinyawani had was that a Leyland and a Bedford truck. These were the only vehicles you could see in the village. So seeing elderly people riding in these vehicles out in those villages, in those forests, was one of the things that a child would aspire to have. If you ask a child in the village at the time I grew up to make or mold something, they would mold for you a cow. A child in the city would mold a car. Today, children can mold aeroplanes. I didn't have that luxury. The only thing better than the cattle and the goats I would see was a truck.
And I wonder, did you get to maybe go into that truck? Did the principal give you the opportunity to, at least, even if you are not driving, but just to find yourself inside that truck? Were you at least able to get that, experience?
The school principal was a friend to my grandfather. So even before I started schooling, I used to go to school with my grandfather, who was a member of the school committee. And because when we were there were no kindergartens and crèches.
Yeah.
So I would offer to remain and play in the playgrounds of the school. And sometimes I would fall asleep and the school principal would give me a ride home. I guess I offered to fall more asleep so that I could be driven home by the school principal.
No, that's like a plan. You planned to sleep so that you get a free ride back
That's
home.
why I wanted to be a truck driver.
Yeah, and then you became a statistician-general. How did that come about?
For starters, the subject statistics was not known in the village. It so happened that when I was at high school, I performed well in mathematics. We had one teacher. He had a BSc degree in pedagogics, Mr. George Ngoveni, who was hired by Mr. Tyrone Magadzi, my school principal, to whom I have to give them honor.
Yeah.
He was brought in and he taught us, and somehow I excelled in mathematics. So when I finished, I wanted to be like him, to do a BSc degree in mathematics. My mother and my father wanted me to do a BA. I didn't even know what a BA was at the time, but they used to encourage me because there was an elderly man, Mr. Thomas Masuluke, in the village who had a BA, and he was wearing those gowns, and they wanted me to wear those gowns. But long and short, I entered university, studied mathematics, accounting, computer science. I was doing a degree in computer science. I failed all subjects in my first year and passed my matric. And this is a very important thing because most young people, when they fail, they give up. When you fail, you pick up your pieces and find a way to go back to school. Today, they have a free education at institutions of higher learning. We didn't have that. My father and my uncle said to put some money together to pay for my funding at the university because the bursary that I had was withdrawn when I failed my first year. So when I went back, I performed well again in mathematics, which I had passed by the way in my first year. At first year, I failed all subjects and passed mathematics with a distinction. So I actually continued with mathematics, applied maths, mathematical statistics. And that's where I realized that I'm actually excelling in mathematical statistics. So I finished my first degree in mathematical statistics and operations research. And indeed, I went to study other things at town and regional planning in the form of fitting mathematical models on population and the like. And I have also studied leadership at the Harvard Business School. Actually, I was at the Harvard Business School twice in my life to study leadership. So if you ask me, the point is I didn't plan like any other mother or father. There are children born today. When mothers and fathers, when parents look at their children, they do not know what they will be in the future. But one of the things is that in the end, those children, regardless of where they grow, whether they grow in the village, in informal settlements, in the leafy suburbs, those children will be something one day.
And that was a deliberate question because we have to inspire, especially the younger generation. You earlier on said when you fail, you don't have to give up because that's something that we see a lot recently where they fail a subject and then they leave school. One subject, passing maybe 4 or 5 other subjects. So we don't know what could be the reason for someone to leave school because he failed one subject. Then fast forward, SG, you found yourself in this office. Did you work with the former Statistician-General, or were you working somewhere in the statistics space before you were brought in?
I've been working in government all my life. So if you ask me, by the time we come to, 2027, I will have spent almost 30 years at Stats SA, and I will have spent about 35 years in the services of our government. I've started working in Guyana during the apartheid years, and I went all in the formation of the new government in Limpopo, and I joined Stats SA in 1997. So in another 2 years, I'll be 30 years in Stats SA. So, saying that, I've worked with the former Statistician-General Padile Huhla for quarter of a century, 25 years. When he was in Bophuthatswana and later in the Northwest, and I was in Limpopo, we were setting up a new government statistical function. And of course, there were challenges. There were those who were managing statistics at the time, who thought that you needed to keep those appendages of the homelands, and those of us who came from the homelands or in the newly formed provinces should supply the national office. And we said no. We will either establish our own offices, or if we don't, we need one status as we have a unitary government state in South Africa. We don't have a federal system. And that's how I got to know Padile Hutla.
And at the end of your term, is there anything that you want to do beyond this position or this job of the Statistician General?
I've always been a cattle header. I grew up heading cattle in the village, and everything, cattle have always been my life. When I was small, when they say they need some food, share or anything, we would go under the cow, milk it and get milk. If you need somewhere to sleep on, you get a mat, you get litlal or the skin of a cow. Yeah. Otherwise, if you need meat, you need food, you get meat from a cow. If you need,
but can you still do that?
If I can still milk. I can still milk. I still go to.
When last did you go to milk a cow?
Last Easter, I was milking a cow in the village, and this December, I'll be heading cattle. I have cattle in the village, so I do go out with cattle. And of course, I have a family history that runs for almost 1,000 years in cattle ranching and looking after cattle. Almost every ancestor I've had have been looking after cattle, and they have had cattle of their own. Yeah. So that will not stop me from going back to be a cattle header.
And finally, are there any relations between yourself and the Auditor General of South Africa, the genius Tsakani Maluleke?
All the Malulekes are one. We derive our surname Maluleke from Old Man Malenga. And then Tsakani is my niece. And her father, the late Judge George Maluleke, was my cousin. There are other Malulekes, but we know each other. So when we meet as the Malulekes, the first thing, we recite the family tree. So I can recite the family tree 23 generations backwards. Sure. She can do the same. Yeah. Professor Tinyiko Maluleke can do the same. Professor Kuluman Maluleke can do the same. Any other Maluleke. So we know where we connect. I know her very well. I've met her many times. She has met me many times, and we are family. But having said that we are family, let me tell you, each of us have come on our own competencies to be in the positions we occupy.
Definitely. I wish to be a Maluleke one day. Thank you so much, SG. We appreciate your time on UFM this evening. Leka moso, ka Setswana ba rialo. Ha ke itse lena le reng ka segaetsho, but we say ka moso, meaning there must be a second time where you come and join us more UFM. The Statistician-General of the Republic of South Africa, Risenga Maluleke, speaking to us this evening on UFM News Hour. And that's how we come to the end of the Tuesday edition of UFM News Hour on the 3rd day of December 2024. Motlhaping Modise, and it's been a great pleasure being in your company. It's 7 o'clock. Let's take the news. Good evening to you.
The UFM News Hour with Motlhaping p.m.